Good morning, everyone. So you are tasked to determine the rule and the rules of differentiation. So we have to determine the relationship between differentiability and continuity, and we have to derive the differentiation rules, and we are going to apply these rules in computing the derivative of the functions. So the first one is you have to define what is differentiable. When I say differentiable, the first criteria, it must have a derivative at each point in its domain. It means there is no vertical tangent line at each interior point in its domain, and it must be smooth, and it has no cusp, break, or angle in the given function. Differentiable siya pag continuous ang ating function. We have to define first continuous as a review. Continuous has three conditions to be satisfied. The first is that f of c is defined. That means wala siyang walang hole. The limit of f of x exists as x goes to c from the left and from the right. That means they are the same. And that means that the f of c is equal to the limit of f of x. And if these three conditions are satisfied, then it is continuous. Otherwise, we say it is discontinuous at x equals c. And we also defined the continuity on the real number. We say that it is continuous everywhere if it is continuous at every real number, because the domain are all x in the set of the real number. The third one is very unimportant definition, that if a function f is differentiable at a number c, then the limit exists as h goes to 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So if x is equals to c, then we say that f prime of c, this is the referring to the point c, and f of c, we have the tangent, we have the slope of the tangent line, which is referred to f prime of c, which is equal to the limit of c plus h minus f of c all over h as h goes to 0. If the limit exists, then it is differentiable. If differentiable, I say that the converse may not be true. So this definition is a one-way. Differentiable if the limit exists. So hindi natin pwede siyang baliktarin that the limit exists if differentiable. It is not true. So the converse is not true. Say for example, we have the illustration, example 1. We know this function piecewise is very familiar to you, that if x is equal to 1, then that means we are referring to the limit. So if this is not equal to 1, then we find the limit as x goes to 1 from the left and from the right, and we know that from the left and from the right is equal to 4, and by direct substitution at x equals 1, we have 4, and we can find that the limit is equal to the substituted function. That means ang graph natin ay walang hole. That means the limit is equal to the f of c, and therefore this function is continuous, and if continuous, it means it is differentiable. So number 2 also, since we have from the left of 2, we have negative 4, and from the right of 2, we have 3 minus 2, which is 1. And the limit of f of x from the left is not equal to the limit of f of x from the right. It means the limit does not exist. And if we are going to directly substitute that, we know that f of 2 here is 3 minus 2, which is 1, and the limit does not exist, and therefore it is not differentiable. It means the graph is not smooth. It is not differentiable in general. So let's have another example. Consider this f of x equals to the cube root of x, and by definition we are going to derive. So to derive this one, to find the derivative, we have f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h goes to 0. That means papalitan po natin ito ng x plus h, and you've got cube root of x plus h. And this f of x is cube root of x, so we copied over h as h goes to 0. And our task actually is to make this one a perfect cube and this one a perfect cube. and therefore we use the cube of the difference of the two cubes, and that means we need to multiply using the factoring. We can factor this x plus a cube minus b cube is equal to a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So we will use that concept, and therefore we have x plus h squared, then plus this one, the product of x and x plus h, that is, and then the square of x. So that is, we multiplied 1 is in the form of this, so that we can multiply these things and we've got the perfect cube, or we have the cube root of x plus h cube, and we've got the cube root of x cube. Then we have this perfect cube minus cube root of x cube, that is equal to x. And this one, we multiplied h times, or say just copy this one. And we know that this one is equal to h. That means we have x minus x is 0, and that is h. That means we can cancel h, and that means mang maiiwan ay 1 over this one, these things in the denominator. And as h goes to 0, that means this is 0. This one is 0, and this one, okay. So we have x squared, and x squared, and we have 3x squared, so that is 1 over 3 times the cube root of x squared. This is the first derivative of cube root of x. And we have to find the f of f prime of 1 to get if this is differentiable at x equals 1. And we have 1/3, and we know that the limit is equal also to 1/3. On the other hand, f prime of 0 does not exist. Hence, f is not differentiable at x equals 0. In the example 4, the function defined by f of x is equals to 5x when x is less than 1 and 2x plus 3 when x is greater than or equal to 1. So this is continuous at x equals 1, but it's not differentiable. We know that in differentiable, it's not enough to say it must be only continuous. There must be a derivative. The derivative must exist. So that means we need to find the derivative first. But here, when we look at the limit of the function by direct substitution from the f of 1, that is 2 times x kasi dito ang equal, so we have 2x plus 3. Kasi andito ang equal, then dito ang f of 1, so that is 2 times 1 plus 3, and that is 5. Now, titingnan naman natin, if x is less than 1, that means from the left, we have this 5 times 1, that is 5. And from the right, that is 2 times 1 plus 3, that is also 5. So from the left and from the right, it is equal to 5. But when you look at the derivative, by computing the derivative, f of x is equals to 5x, and the limit of 5 times x plus h minus f of x over h is equal to 5. And for x is greater than 1, we have 2 times x plus h, of course, plus 3, minus 2 times x plus h. This is f of x plus h. This is minus f of x over h. And we have 2x plus 2h plus 3, or minus 2x minus 3. So what happened? It becomes 2h over h, and that is equal to 2. Since the left and the right are not the same, since the one-sided limits at x equals 1 do not coincide, the limit at x equals 1 does not exist. Since this is the definition of the derivative at x equals 1, we conclude that f is not differentiable at x equals 1. The limit exists, but the derivative does not exist. So it is not still differentiable. In Theorem 6, if a function f is differentiable at a, then f is continuous at a. The derivative of a function f, the function f prime whose value at a number x in the domain of f is given by f prime of x is equals to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x over h as h goes to 0 if the limit exists. Now, let's look at the example. Is, say, for example, f of x equals 3x squared. So, first of all, we need to find f of x plus h minus f of x to find the derivative kasi yun po yung sa numerator. And you've got f of x plus h minus f of x, that is equal to 3 times x plus h squared plus 4 minus 3x squared plus 4. So this is it. And then we simplify. You've got 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared plus 4. Kasi ito ay x squared plus 2xh plus h squared times 3 ang lahat. And then minus this one. So by having that one, we add, and what remains is we have 6hs plus 3h squared. And by factoring h, we've got 6h plus 3h. Bakit kailangan i-factor? Because sa denominator, meron po tayong h. So by having this limit of f of x plus h minus f of x, which is this result, over h, then we have h times 6x plus 3h over h, then that will be cancelled, and this means that as h goes to 0, we've got 6h plus 3 times 0, that is equal to 6h. So therefore, derivative of 3x squared plus 4 is equals to 6h. Now we are going to have the differentiating the constant functions. So this is the first rule, or we call this one the constant rule, that if f of x equals c, that is the constant, any number, then f prime of x equals 0. It means, ang ating y is equal to any number, kasi ito ay horizontal line, automatic ang slope niya doon ay 0. The derivative of a constant is equal to 0. The proof is here, we have f of x plus h. We know that our x plus h is equal to c, and the f of x is equal to c also. Then this is equivalent to limit of c minus c over h, that is equal to 0. Okay? And it means f of x equals 10, the first derivative of f of x equals 0. If h of x equals negative square root of 3, then the derivative is 0 also. If the g of x is equals to 5 pi, then the first derivative of g of x is equals to 0. If f of x equals x squared, then the first derivative is equals to 2x. And if f of x equals x cubed, then f prime of x equals 3x squared. If the function f of x equals x to the fourth, then f prime of x is equals to 4x cubed. And if we have f of x equals x to the fifth, then f prime of x equals 5x to the fourth. F of x equals x to the sixth, then f prime of x equals 6x to the fifth. This one is not related to this, but this is the leading of the second rule of differentiation. But when we look at this, ano ba ang shortcut para magkakaroon tayo ng derivative? Yun ang rule natin tinitingnan. As you can see, this 2 is related to that, no? Itong 3 are related to that, yung sa first derivative. Ang 4 related to that. Ang 5 are related to that. 6 related to that. So that means these numerical coefficients of this first derivative are all related to the exponent of this, right? And if we look at the exponent also in this one, we have 2, we've got 1, we've got 3, we've got 2, 4, 3. That means all of the exponents here are subtracted by 1. And this is our power rule. So if f of x equals x to the n, where n is any real number or natural number, I mean, because this is a polynomial, then f prime of x, the first derivative of the function, is equal to yung exponent niya, which is the numerical, and then yung kanyang exponent ay maminusan ng 1. So babalikan natin yon. Ito ay magiging numerical coefficient, ito ay maminusan ng 1, so 2 minus 1 is 1. Ito ay magiging 3 dito, and then 3 minus 1, that is 2. Ito ay magiging 4, then 4 minus 1, magiging 3. 5 dito ang numerical, then 5 minus 1 is 4, and so on. So that is our power rule, and the proof of that is this. So if we have here the f of x plus h, we have f of x plus h, that is x plus h raised to the power of n, minus x to the power of n as f of x over h. If we are going to expand this one in the polynomial, it is defined as x to the n by the binomial expansion. That is equivalent to nxn raised to the power of negative 1, n minus negative n minus 1, I mean times h, and so on, up to the h to the power of n by the binomial expansion, of course, minus x to the n. And of course, this becomes 0. Yeah. And then we can factor the h here. That means ay magiging cancel din yung 0. Yeah. And that means it remains that nx raised to the power of n minus 1 plus n times n minus 1 over 2 factorial times x raised to the power of n minus 2 times h, kasi po ito ay nakabase na sa ating binomial expansion na formula on the combination. So, we have here plus h raised to the power of n minus 1. Naging may n minus 1 kasi kung ang h to the n ay kukunan natin ng h na isa, that means h to the power of n minus 1 na lang siya. Okay? Because h to the power of n minus 1 times h is equal to h to the n. Okay? So, since ito ay magiging 0, kasi lahat po yan ay magiging 0 because h is approaching to 0, that means ito na lang maiwan, so that is the derivative. So, therefore, let's have an example number 1. If f of x equals to x cubed, then f prime of x is equals to, kukunin natin ang 3, then subtract, that is 3x squared. Ang g prime of x natin, so for example, is equal to 1 over x squared. So, pwede nating isusulat siya into x to the negative 2. So, ang x to the negative 2, ang negative 2 ay kukunin natin as the numerical coefficient, for that is the first derivative. And then, ang ating negative 2 ay maminusan ng 1. So, ang mangyayari, that is negative 2x to the power of negative 3 or negative 2 over x cubed. Kung meron naman tayong square root of x, we know that the square root of x ay the same sa x to the 1/2. So, ang 1/2 ay ilalagay natin sa numerical coefficient. Ang 1/2 minusan ng 1, and that is our first derivative, which is 1 over 2 square root of x, and so on. Now, let's proceed to the third rule, which is called the constant multiple rule, that if f of x equals to k times h of x, where k is a constant, then f prime of x is equals to k times f h prime of x. So, parang ano ka lang, you are just factoring the constant, and then you find the derivative of the function. Say, for example, we have example 3. Find the derivatives of the following function, yung 5x to the power of 3 over 4. So, it means itong 5 ay factor, and then ang derivative ng x to the power of 3 over 4 ay 3/4 times x to the power of 3 over 4 minus 1, kasi ito ay power rule. So, ang magiging result ay maging 15 over 4 times x raised to the power of negative 1/4. In letter B, we have 1/3 cube root of x. We know that cube root is the same as x to the power of 1/3. So, that means ito ay pwedeng isusulat ng 1/3 x to the power of 1/3. And this one ay magiging numerical coefficient, that is 1/3 times 1/3. And then, minusan ng 1. We've got 1/3 minus 1, that is negative 2/3. And then we have 1 over 9 x to the power of negative 2/3. In letter C, we have negative square root of 3 times x. Ang dito lang po ang x. So, it means ito ay factor natin. And we know that this one is negative square root of 3, and ang x natin, ang kanyang derivative ay 1 times x to the power of 1 minus 1. And x to the 0 is 1, so we've got 0 or 1 times negative square root of 3. So, the answer is negative square root of 3. So, very clear na po yun. And let's proceed to the rule number 4, the sum rule. If we're going to add the g of x and h of x, then the first derivative is the sum of their derivatives. Example to that is we have letter A. So, for example, f of x equals 5x raised to the power of 3/4, and the g of x equals 1/3 times cube root of x, and letter C, we have h of x equals the negative square root of 3 times x. We know in the past na ito ang kanyang mga derivative. We have 15 over 4x to the negative 1/4. We have 1 over 9x to the power of negative 2/3, and we have negative square root of 3. So, kung i-add natin itong dalawa, it means i-add din natin itong dalawa. Kung i-add natin itong dalawa, the first derivative of this is yung sum din ng dalawa. Similar to that, yung sum nito, ang kanyang derivative ay sum din na itong kanilang mga derivatives. So, what happened is this. If we have going to find the f of x plus g of x, of course, we can have the result. And then, g of x plus h of x, we can have also the result. F of x plus h of x, we can have also the result. So, these are the results of these functions. So, kung titingnan natin, differentiate the following, f of x plus g of x. So, ito ay derivative na po kanina and yung derivative kanina. So, ito na yung final. And ito na yung derivative kanina plus derivative. So, i-add lang din. And this one, the derivative of f of x and the derivative of h of x. So, ayun na siya. So, kung isa-subtract, ganun pa rin. So, magmamatter, minus lang din. And then, this one is also minus. And then, this one is also minus. So, that is for the rule of sum or sum rule. Let's proceed to the product rule. So, the product rule, medyo kakaiba siya because if f and g are differentiable functions, then we have the derivative of f of x times g of x is equal to the product of f of x times the derivative of g of x plus g of x times the derivative of f of x. So, ang ibig sabihin nito is ito ay copy derivative plus copy derivative. So, parang combination lang ng walang derivative sa may derivative. Kasi product sila dalawa. So, for example, this is the first 3x squared minus 4 and this one. So, when we find the first derivative, so ang gagawin lang, kukopyahin yan siya ang una, i-derive natin ito. Plus, kukopyahin and then i-derive natin ito. So, it means, kukopyahin, ang derivative nito ay, of course, ito ay 2x minus 1. So, that means 2x. Then, minus, ang derivative kasi ng x ay 1. So, 3 na lang may 1. Copy then, and then the derivative of this is 6x because 2 times 3 is 6. Then, x to the power of 1. Minus the derivative of any constant is 0. So, we've got 6x. So, we have to multiply now. We have 6x cubed minus 9x squared minus 8x plus 12, and you've got 6x cubed minus 18x squared, and we combine, you've got 12x raised to the power of 3 minus, we have 27x cubed, x squared, so 27x squared minus 8x plus 12. So, this is the first derivative of this product. Okay? So, for the quotient also, say for example, you've got square root of x times, pwede man natin siya i-multiply agad, pwede rin siyang gamitan ng, we know that square root of x is equal to x to the 1/2, so it means you've got x to the 1/2, kopyahin, then derivative sa loob, plus, kopyahin, and then, kopyahin ito, and then derivative doon. Pwede rin dito yan siya ilagay, okay. So, we have here copy. So, x to the 1/2 derivative is 18x squared plus 2 minus 0. Okay? The derivative nito ay 1/2 x to the power of negative 1/2 kasi maging numerical coefficient minus 1 pa talaga sa taas. And this one is 6x cubed plus 2x minus 4. And then we multiply this one. This is 1/2 plus 2, that is 5/2 or 2.5. And then this one is plus 2 raised to the power of times x raised to the power of 1/2, and then this one is plus, this one is we multiply, that is 6 times 1/2 is 3, then 3 times negative 1/2 or 3 plus negative 1/2, that is 5/2, and this one is plus 2 times 1/2 is 1, then x times negative 1/2 is 1/2, and then minus 4 times 1/2 is 2, and then x to the power of negative 1/2. So, i-add lang natin ang mga 5/2, and then i-add natin ang puro 1/2, and then we've got here 21x to the 5/2 plus 3x raised to the power of 1/2 minus 2x raised to the power of negative 1/2. This is the derivative of this f of x. Now, let's proceed to the division or the quotient using the product rule. F of x over g of x can be written as f of x times 1 over g of x. And we know that this one, pwede nating sabihin na function na, and hence we can compute the derivative if we know f prime of x and this 1 over g of x, the prime of that. So, say for example, and we know that the g of x is this, we have 1 over g plus x plus h minus 1 over g of x. This is f of x plus h minus f of x over h as h goes to 0. So, by simplifying, this is equivalent to g of x minus g times x plus h, g of x plus h, over g of x plus h times g of x, times 1 over h. Itong 1 over h ay ating finactor. And this one is g of x, yung ating derivative. Ito, common denominator. Yeah. So, parang ano lang, multiply, multiply, then multiply. Ito na yung result. ito ang ating ginawa, that is negative. Ang derivative ng 1 over g of x ay negative g of x times 1 over g of x squared. Okay. Kasi ito ay magiging 0 na kasi. 0 na kasi yan siya. Oh. So, that is g of x times g of x. Alam natin na ito ay equivalent sa negative g prime of x. You know? By definition. Yeah. Ito ay magiging 1 over g of x squared kasi mag-0 yan siya. Okay? So, we have to define first yung derivative of f of x over g of x, that is f of x times 1 over g of x. Alam natin na ang derivative ng f of x ay yung kanina is copy, then derivative plus copy, then derivative. So, ito ay copy, then derivative of that is equal to this. So, ito ang derivative niya, negative g of x over g of x squared. Then, plus, this one is copy. So, copy natin and then the derivative. So, that is f prime of x over g of x. And then, by having this one, the LCD is g of x squared. So, g of x squared and negative g of x times f of x, of course, plus f prime of x times g of x. Simplify natin ito. So, we know that f of x is here, no? Saan ito galing? So, f of x times negative g, so ito yun. And then, this one is yan. And this one, yung g of x squared divided by g of x is g of x times f prime of x is f prime of x times g of x. So, ito na yung kanyang simplified form. So, therefore, ang ating quotient rule ay, ito yon, the derivative of f of x over g of x is equals to g of x times the derivative of f of x minus copy f of x times the minus the derivative of g of x over g of x squared. So, yun po yung ating derivative. Remember that the derivative of f of x over g of x is not equal to the derivative of f of x over the derivative of f of x. Kasi, ang ibig sabihin nito ay derive natin ang numerator at saka denominator. Ito ay dinerive natin ang kanyang quotient. So, for easier, ito ang ginagamit natin. We have the derivative of high over low, that is numerator over denominator, or high over low, is equals to copy the low, derivative of the high, minus high, copy, then derivative of the low, over low, or denominator squared. So, that is low the high minus high the low, over low squared. So, low the high minus high the low, low the high minus high the low. Paki-memorize, low the high minus high the low, low the high minus high the low, over low squared. So, example to that is h of x equals 3x plus 5 over x squared plus 4. We have to compute the h prime of x. So, ang gagawin po natin ay, una, we have f of x equals to 3x plus 5, and we have g of x equals x squared plus 4. So, ang derivative ng this one ay 3. Ang derivative nito ay 2x. No? Kasi 2 times x to the power of 1. And then, ito ay 0 kasi yan. So, unahin natin ang sa numerator. So, una natin doon is, kopyahin ang denominator which is equal to x squared plus 4, and then derivative ng dito sa taas, that is derivative of 3x plus 5 is 3. So, times 3. Minus, copy the numerator, then derivative sa baba. So, that is, numerator is 3x plus 5 times 2x over the denominator squared. So, low, the high, derivative of the numerator minus high, derivative of the low over low squared. So, we've got 3x squared plus 12 minus 6x squared minus 10x, and then we've got 12 minus 10x minus 3x squared over x squared plus 4 raised to the power of 2. So, ito na yung ating final answer. This is our final derivative of this. Don't worry about this one. Kung hindi siya na-simplify, okay lang yon. Now, let's proceed to the derivative of this letter B. So, we have to derive this 2x to the 4th plus 7x squared minus 4 over 3x to the 5th plus x to the 4th minus x plus 1. So, kung ritsuhin natin siya, kopyahin ang denominator. Huwag kayong mag-alala kung mataas. Kopyahin ang denominator times derivative of the numerator minus, always minus pag may quotient. Copy this one and the derivative of the denominator. So, over denominator squared. So, ang mangyari that is 3x to the fifth. Ito kasi ang copy lang. Copy. Derivative nito ay 8x cube. Derivative nito ay 14x minus 0. Andito naman copy. So, copy. Derivative nito is 15x. 5 minus 1 is 4. This one is 4x cube kasi 4 then 4 minus 1. Minus ito ay derivative niyan ay 1. Derivative nito ay 0. So, over 3x to the fifth plus x to the fourth minus x plus 1 squared. So, ito na yon. Kung ating isi-simplify, wala tayong mangyayari. So, okay na yon ang ating final na derivative. Now, let's proceed to the derivative of trigonometric functions. So, ang trigonometric functions, ang derivative ng sin x ay cosine x. And the derivative of cosine x ay negative sin x. The derivative of tangent x is equals to secant squared x. Derivative of cotangent x is negative cosecant squared x. The derivative of secant x equals secant x tangent x. The derivative of cosecant x equals negative cosecant x cotangent x. Now, we have to prove all of these 6, but we have to bear in mind na kung co ang mauna, cos, cot, cosecant, ay puro negative. No? So, you have negative sin x, you have negative cosecant squared x, negative cosecant x, times cotangent x. So, itong cot, cosecant, at saka cosine ay puro negative. The rest ay positive. Cosine, the derivative of sine, the derivative of tangent x is secant x squared. So, what is the derivative of cot x? Negative cosecant squared x. Derivative of cosecant x, negative cosecant x, cotangent x. Ito naman ay may sila, connected. Why? Because secant, cosecant, secant, cosecant, tangent, cotangent, negative nga lang. Ito rin ay may pagkakaugnay, tangent x and cotangent x. So, this is secant squared, cosecant, negative. Ito rin ay may pagkakaugnay. So, cosine, sine, okay. Yun po yung, so we have to prove first yung ito, sin x.